On the way to his death, Jesus showed us how to live and how to die. We cannot rise with Christ unless we walk the path with him. It is by dealing with our own problems in the right spirit that we come to know God's love and God's mercy. This year has been a year of death and dying, despair and discouragement. Tonight we embrace the pain and we lament all that has been lost, seeking to give Jesus our pain, that he might take it with him to the tomb. As we enter into this way of Christ, the cross with Jesus, let us all feel as he felt, hurt as he hurt, love as he loved. Dear Jesus, as we walk the way of the cross with you, help us to imagine what you felt and what you saw that day. Help us to think about what it means to be your followers today.
The first station, Jesus is condemned to death. The chief priests with the elders and the scribes, that is, the whole Sanhedrin, held a council. They bound Jesus, led him away, and handed him over to Pilate. Pilate questioned him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" He said to him in reply, "You say so." The chief priests accused him of many things. Again Pilate questioned him, "Have you no answer? See how many things they accuse you of?" Jesus gave him no further answer, so that Pilate was amazed. Pilate, wishing to satisfy the crowd, released Barabbas and handed Jesus over to be crucified.
Jesus is unfairly accused and put on trial for teaching us to love our neighbors and care about others. Pontius Pilate convicts Jesus, even though he knows it is wrong to do it, only to please the crowd. Jesus came to a world filled with Pontius Pilates. Sometimes we judge others because of the way they look or act. Sometimes we forget to do the right thing and follow the crowd. Sometimes we are Pilate. Dear Jesus, help us to be fair and not to judge others. Help us to stand up for what we believe in and do the right thing. Keep us close to you. Move us to call out to you, especially when we are sad and lonely.
The second station. When the chief priests and the guards saw Jesus, they cried out, "Crucify him! Crucify him!" Pilate said to them, "Take him yourselves and crucify him. I find no guilt in him." They cried out, take him away, crucify him." Pilate said to them, "Shall I crucify your king?" The chief priests answered, "We have no king but Caesar." Then he handed him over to them to be crucified. So they took Jesus, and carrying the cross himself, he went out to what is called the place of the skull, in Hebrew, Golgotha.
Once the punishment is announced, crucifixion, Jesus knows there's only one way for him to go. He takes up his cross and starts on the road to Calvary. His innocent body is badly bruised from head to toe, and he is so alone now. Yet he knows he is doing God's will, and so continues on his way. During this year, it feels like we are bruised from head to toe. There is only one way to go, with Jesus. Dear Jesus, sometimes we feel sad, our feelings get hurt, and we can't seem to get over it. Like your cross, our problems seem to crush us. When we are by ourselves, we wonder, am I the only one who feels this way? Help us remember most of all that Jesus is always there for us.
The third station. Simon of Cyrene helps Jesus to carry his cross. They pressed into service a passerby, Simon of a Cyrenian, who was coming in from the country, the father of Alexander and Rufus, to carry his cross.
Simon is just an ordinary person who was selected out of the crowd to help Jesus carry his cross. Simon did not want to get involved. But by the time they reached the top of the hill, Simon knew he was supposed to help Jesus. He realized who Jesus was. Sometimes we argue about having to help or to do things we do not want to do. During the past year, we have been like Simon, but we push on through knowing it's the right thing. Dear Jesus, help us to allow others in our lives, our family, teachers, friends, to help us with our problems. Help us to realize that we need help and to trust people just as you trusted Simon.
The fourth station. Jesus meets the woman of Jerusalem. A large crowd of people followed Jesus, including many women who mourned and lamented him. Jesus turned to them and said, "Daughters of Jerusalem, do not weep for us. Weep instead for yourselves and for your children, for indeed the days are coming when people will say, 'Blessed are the barren, the wombs that never bore, and the breasts that never nursed.' At that, people will say to the mountains, 'Fall upon us,' and to the hills, 'Cover us.' For if these things are done when the wood is green, what will happen when it is dry?"
Despite his own suffering, Jesus takes time to comfort the women who are watching him from the crowd. Jesus stops and says to them, "Don't cry for us, but cry for yourselves and for your children." Sometimes we get so wrapped up in our own problems that we forget to think about others and their troubles. There are people all around us suffering, but Jesus remembers them, then calls us to remember them as well. Dear Jesus, you love us no matter what we do. Teach us to deal with the issues in our lives as you would. Help us to realize that sadness and problems might come, but that they will pass. Jesus, please help us to share your love with everyone we meet.
The fifth station. Jesus is stripped of his garments. They stripped off Jesus' clothes and put a scarlet robe on him. They made a crown out of thorn branches and placed it on his head, and they put a stick in his right hand. The soldiers knelt down and pretended to worship him. They made fun of him and shouted, "Hey, you King of the Jews!" Then they spit on him. They took the stick from him and beat him on the head with it.
Jesus reaches the top of Mount Calvary. There the soldiers pull off his clothes roughly. They are caked with blood, and the pain is terrible. Jesus teaches us that life is so much more than the things we own. We should always value people more than things. The things that seem important to us today, our clothes, our toys, our electronics, are all temporary. They are often thrown out and replaced with something else. Of all times, we remember in these days that people are more important than things. Dear Jesus, everything we have is a gift from you. Everything we do, we should try to do for you in the way you would do it. Please help us to remember that with you in our lives, we have everything we really need.
The sixth station. Jesus is nailed to the cross. They came to a place named Golgotha, which means place of a skull. There they gave Jesus some wine mixed with a drug to ease the pain. But when Jesus tasted what it was, he refused to drink it. The soldiers nailed Jesus to a cross and gambled to see who would get his clothes. Then they sat down to guard him. Above his head they put a sign that told why he was nailed there. It read, "This is Jesus, the King of the Jews." The soldiers also nailed two criminals on crosses, one to the right of Jesus and the other to his left.
The soldiers roughly shove Jesus down on the cross. Then they drive nails into his hands and into his feet. After that, they lift the cross into place. The pain is terrible, but Jesus knows he is fulfilling the will of God in order to save us from sin and death. Sometimes we must give up what we have or do what we do not want to do in order to accomplish our purpose. What have you given up during this year that has helped you discover your purpose? Dear Jesus, help us to forgive people who hurt us, including our family or friends, the same way you forgave those who nailed you to the cross.
The seventh station. Jesus speaks to his mother from the cross. Meanwhile, standing near the cross of Jesus were his mother and his mother's sister, Mary the wife of Clopas, and Mary Magdalene. When Jesus saw his mother and the disciple whom he loved standing beside her, he said to his mother, "Woman, here is your son." Then he said to the disciple, "Here is your mother." And from that hour the disciple took her into his own home.
Jesus looks down from the cross. He has been beaten, scourged, abused. The nails that hold him dig into his bones, and he knows what is coming. He speaks, "Woman, here is your son." Imagine the pain she must have felt, knowing that she cannot do anything. Mothers absorb and carry the pain of their children. Her sorrow was overwhelming and pain unbearable. Dear Jesus, help us to open our hearts and share our sadness with others. Give us eyes to see as you see, even the painful things. At the same time, help us to know that our friends are there to stand with us when we are sad and lonely. Help us to open our hearts to always accept help.
The eighth station. Jesus dies on the cross. After this, when Jesus knew that all was now finished, he said, in order to fulfill the scripture, "I am thirsty." A jar full of sour wine was standing there. So they put a sponge full of the wine on a branch of hyssop and held it to his mouth. When Jesus had received the wine, he said, "It is finished." Then he bowed his head and gave up his spirit.
Jesus knows everything he set out to do has been completed. He cries out, "It is finished." Then Jesus bows his head and gives up his spirit up to God. It seems so unnecessary for Jesus to die this way. He was not a criminal. He had done nothing wrong. Yet sometimes sad and difficult things happen to people who are good, the people whom we love, and sometimes we cause those things to happen. Dear Jesus, you died to redeem the world and make a way for all to share in your glory. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you for giving your life for our sake. Make us worthy of your sacrifice. We adore you, O Christ, and we praise you, because by your holy cross you have redeemed the world. We have walked the way of the cross with you, Jesus. Take the chains that bind us with you to the cross, so that we might be freed from death and sin through the gift of resurrection.
Were you there when they crucified my Lord? Were you you there when they crucified my Lord? Oh, sometimes it causes me to tremble, tremble, tremble. Were you there when they crucified my Lord? Were you there when they laid him in the tomb? Were you there when they laid him in the tomb? Oh, sometimes it causes me to tremble, tremble, tremble. Were you there when they laid him in the tomb?